Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Laura-Lynn Thompson, leader of the Christian Heritage Party of BC, online at chpbc.ca. Congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's really exciting, and looking forward to kind of, giving it a fresh look and hoping that people maybe now will think it's time to have a look at the values we represent.
Can you tell us about some upcoming events?
Well, events. I don't know if I really have events. We like to train people. We have a lot of Zoom happening with the whole COVID-19 that's come in. It's certainly changed how we do things. But a big event that I'll be at is October 17th and 18th, and that'll be at the Art Gallery in downtown Vancouver, BC. We're hoping to have several thousand. And we just did a great event with about 2,000 there, just over a week ago. It was absolutely phenomenal, and it's really celebrating Canada's freedoms. And, we're not in support of some of these tremendous lockdown initiatives that are going on.
So, what is the party platform?
Well, if you look at it, it's so simple. It's life, family, and freedom. We love talking about the protection of innocent human life from conception until natural death. We love to share about strengthening the natural family unit, father, mother, and children, and the protection of our personal freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom to build a business, freedom from coercion by dictatorial governments that want to bully us into compelled speech and politically correct practices, freedom from excessively high taxes, crippling debts, freedom to raise our children as we see fit. We are the ultimate freedom party for people of any thought or ideological belief.
What have you decided about what riding you're going to run in?
Well, I have been looking at that extensively over the last few days, and it's not actually easy, and I haven't come to a decision. So I was looking at Abbotsford South, and then somebody told me that they're very unhappy with the provincial Liberal candidate in Langley. So I'm going to look at that, and I'm also looking at my territory that I know well, and that is Burnaby. And this riding in Burnaby is where I have canvassed, to be a school trustee, and also canvassed to be an MP and went up against Jagmeet Singh. And both times, did fairly well, because when I, campaigned to be a school trustee, I was an independent. I had barely any resources, but 15,200 people voted for me in the Burnaby area. And so that's pretty good. And also I got 10.65% against Jagmeet Singh. And it was, that was a pretty unheard of amount for a first-time party run, as the very first candidate to run for the People's Party of Canada at that time.
Do you have any idea how many ridings the Christian Heritage Party will be running candidates in?
No, right now it remains to be seen, because the fervor is all just starting. Apparently in 2017, there were candidates in 5 ridings in BC at least, and so we're confident that we'll more than double that number. And a lot of people contacting us and going into some very hurried training sessions, and new potential candidates are coming out of the woodwork. So we're hoping that all goes really well. And the training sessions are set up to help people that have a passion and can easily step right into it. Hopefully we give them some help and then, put our name forward. It's important that people embrace, like, what an opportunity we have to just stand up for our nation, to stand up for our province, our country, and especially in these crazy times where, 2020's kind of got off the rocker. So, we're all looking at our world a little bit differently this year, and none of us could have predicted what we would be facing right now. So I believe that's actually stirring a lot of sentiment in people's hearts to actually be the solution and be the person to put their name forward, and we're excited about that.
How will you campaign during COVID?
Well, I like campaigning face-to-face, so we will certainly use whatever online tools that we have, but I want to be able to still talk to people directly, and so we still have every intention of door knocking, and we'll be very aware of keeping a safe distance and making sure that people feel safe if we're at their door. But, certainly would love to just be able to have that personal contact that I love so much.
BC's Premier John Horgan called an election a year early just after you became leader of the Christian Heritage Party. Do you think he's afraid of you?
Well, I think he may be afraid that if his COVID lockdowns, go on into the next year, the voters are going to be so sick and tired of it that they'll vote him out in a landslide because, I think what they're trying to do is, move now and get the power before the actual economic fallout from some of these measures, is seen. And so it's a very inconvenient election for most people at this time. It would be far better that he waited and just followed the process, but I think he sees the writing on the wall, and that is that these businesses that aren't going to be restarting, I personally know people whose businesses have absolutely collapsed during this time. The economic fallout that we are yet to see is going to be unprecedented, and, Horgan, seeing that, probably thought it would be better to go ahead right now while we're still, we're not seeing the impact immediately at this time. And so I think it's terrible of him to do this, but the NDP, they've made their decision, and so we're going to have to get our boots on, and we're going to do our best to get through this next period. And we're up for the challenge of it. It's just not a good decision on his part as far as we're concerned, but whatever. We're going to do it.
Some people have suggested to me the government has seen secret modeling that the pandemic is going to get a whole lot worse and hit the economy a whole lot harder. And so he wants to pull the trigger now before the public's aware of what's going on. Do you have any feelings on that?
Yeah, I absolutely think that is 100% what he's doing. He knows that there will be fallout, and, all of these restrictions that are going in, the mask wearing everywhere we go, people are now beginning to report, some issues with their respiratory. It's not healthy to be taking good, healthy immune systems, compromising them by, like, for instance, when you go to any place, Jim, and you want to go to a restaurant to have a meal, well, you've got these poor waiters and waitresses wearing these masks for hours on end. If you talk to them privately and say, how do you feel? Most of them are very, upfront and honest, and they lower their tone in order to talk to you, and they say, I just feel terrible. I have a headache. I feel sick. I don't like it at all. And, all of that, their breath clogging up that thing and trapping, germs and whatnot. None of it's good. And so, all these things are not going to be impacting the nation, well. And in a year, it's going to be far worse. So, yeah. Horgan didn't want to wait, and so that's what he's done. He's jumped the gun. It's a power grab, and we're all going to have to go along for this ride he has us on.
Could a lawsuit against John Horgan's government have played a role in this election call?
Well, it might have. He certainly doesn't want to be on the stand having to defend his government's shutdown of the economy. I don't think that you know, that he can defend what's going on. You know, I've been, on my broadcast that I do daily, live, we've been talking to, Action for Canada and, Vaccine Choice Canada, who are initiating a lawsuit against the government for the lockdown. When we look at the numbers and we see that people, are suffering more from the lockdowns, nothing to do with COVID, but depression is on the rise, anxiety, people are seeing their doctors more, the suicide rate has gone up, there's more domestic abuse, there's more crime, there's a lot of these things that are actually increasing far more than COVID. I personally still do not know one person who has COVID-19. I know of a friend who's had a friend who had it, but I still do not know one person who has had COVID-19. And so, in the face of that, when we see that the economy has struggled and that people are full of fear, like fear is actually the virus. In my opinion, fear is the virus. That, you know, there's probably not a COVID-19 virus within, 30 kilometers of me. And yet, where I live, there's all these measures put in place to protect everybody. And, we're just constantly reminded by all of the masks and everything that, we're dealing with this. But as the CDC has, recently come out with numbers showing that it's actually only 6% of deaths in the world can be actually attributed only to COVID-19. All of the rest are attributed to comorbidities. And that, of course, if you get a flu when you're an elderly person, every year we lose a lot of the elderly because of a flu coming in and taking their lives. So this is a very sad, but it is a normal part of life's process. And so when you make it all about COVID-19 and all of a sudden we've got this, big shutdown, it's scary. And so I don't think that John Horgan wants to actually have to deal with the fallout that we'll be seeing in a year. And yes, I hope that his government is sued for what's going on and their heavy-handed, practices.
We're hearing COVID-19 is not really affecting a lot of people. Also, some believe it's an outright hoax. Would you be pushing to end the lockdowns and end the masks?
Yes, I would be pushing for complete and stopping all of this. That everywhere needs to be open to full capacity, even restaurants. I mean, I'm a person who goes to protests or, recently, just a week and a half ago, I was with 2,000 people in front of the art gallery. Not one person has a problem. Not one person has reported getting COVID-19 from any of that. Yet we go into a restaurant, and sometimes they're small restaurants. They can't open to full capacity. They've got empty tables and seats. Some of them will never reopen. And then we've got everybody having to wear these masks, on SkyTrains and everywhere. We need our economy fully opened. We need people not to be afraid to get out and and understand that they are okay. And definitely people have died of COVID-19. But it is, when you look at the data is not there that supports that these kind of measures are needed. And now we've got Quebec freaking out. Quebec is saying, oh yeah, it's the second wave because they've had so many cases. But when you really look at the data, you want to have a lot of cases because you want herd immunity. We're not hearing about a lot of deaths, and that would be, something that they could say if that was happening, but they don't. All of this stuff on CBC, CTV is a bunch of nonsense, and it's scaremongering, and I don't like it at all, because if we get herd immunity, all of us will have COVID-19, and that will be a whole lot of positives. And I personally, I would rather have COVID-19 now and have a little sniffle or a bug or feel a little under the weather, and get over it because I'm young and I'm healthy. I'm also on hydroxychloroquine, and so, I probably won't get it because that is used as a prophylactic. But here in Canada, we're totally stifling that information from getting out, and we're not allowing people to even have access to hydroxychloroquine, especially our elderly when we're sick. So I think that there is a virus, whether man-made or made in the Wuhan lab. I don't know, because we recently have had that Chinese doctor. She's, been speaking about if it's been, if the virus was made. She says it was made, in the Wuhan, and that's how it escaped. So, I think a lot more has to come out, and the jury's out on all of this.
Well, it sounds like China doesn't have very good biohandling practices in its toxic lab environments, because we've just learned of brucellosis, also known as Malta fever, being released from a factory that was supposed to be making vaccines for animals. So it sounds like they handle dangerous bacterium and viruses all the time, but they don't do a very good job of it. So COVID could have been one of those poorly thought out things.
I agree. I totally agree, Jim. And it just makes no sense that in the beginning, when we knew that the virus had hit in Wuhan, that Dr. Theresa Tam was not shutting our borders. We were allowing thousands of people to come in here. I mean, nothing makes sense. And at that time, she says, don't wear masks. And that's when we had a serious belief that we didn't understand the virus. We thought it was far worse than it is. And at that point, she's saying, don't wear the mask. Now, when the curve is flattening, and we've only had 223 deaths in British Columbia, none of which I know. I don't know if you know anybody, but I don't. And now it's implementing masks, in full enforcement, and the children. And this virus does not affect children. And so now the young people are scared. And I think I really think it's child abuse to have kids being so afraid of something that doesn't even harm them. I mean, how ridiculous have we gotten?
We'll have more with Laura-Lynn Thompson right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Laura-Lynn Thompson. For this election, people can vote by mail-in ballots. Are mail-in ballots open to possible voter fraud on a grand scale where people can vote often, along with dead people and perhaps even their dogs?
Yeah. Well, it's going to depend how they are distributed. A universal mail-in ballot would be a disaster with ballot harvesting and, poor ID protocols. If they stick with personal requests from voters for an absentee ballot, that won't be so bad. But the greater the volume of mail-in ballots, the greater risk for fraud. And I personally do not trust any political establishment at all. I don't. We saw what happened, in the past, even in Maxime Bernier's position where there was, thousands and thousands of ballots, more than was actually on the ID list, the voter list that could vote, And so one of the things that I love about Christian Heritage Party is we just believe in honorable politicking with integrity. And so I trust our people, but I do not trust the powers that be, and certainly not the NDP government, not for a second at all, that they have any integrity to guard the process.
Over the years, we keep hearing about corruption in politics. Is the USMCA Chapter 27 likely to change the way politics is done in BC? And by the way, I don't know what the USMCA Chapter 27 is. What is that?
Well, the Chapter 27, I think that that is something that Norman Traversy, I don't know if you've heard of him, but here's a fellow who, wants to fight corruption. And so I'll see if I can actually pull it up here so that I can say it absolutely correctly. But I don't know the far-reaching implications of if the USMCA can really help us, or how, the U.S. is very busy. They have their own problems right now. And, I mean, Donald Trump has got more than he can handle with all that's going on, with these, crazy riots, so much happening. But, Chapter 27 talks about corruption. And so it's basically saying, the act, so for the purposes of this chapter, it says act or refrain from acting in relationship to the performance of official duties includes any use of the public official's position, whether or not within the official's authorized competence. Foreign public official, these are some definitions within it, and it says means an individual holding a legislative, executive, administrative, or judicial office of a foreign country at any level of government, whether appointed or elected. And so when we want the USMCA to operate on our behalf, basically we're saying, we're telling you that we've got corruption going on in one of these officials, and we would like the USMCA to, deal with it. Specifically, if we have a Canadian person like Justin Trudeau, who we think has corruption coming out the yin-yang and has been, already called up and held short on several scandals, that we don't seem to be able to get justice in Canada at all. The USMCA, I guess in theory, is sort of saying we will investigate these kinds of crimes. So does the Mexican president or Donald Trump have time to investigate right now what is going on with Justin Trudeau and the crimes against humanity that we feel have, been taking place? Well, probably not. So will that change in the future, and will, Donald Trump get in? I believe he is going to get in. And if he does indeed, take office, and if he can get to a time of peace, I don't know. I don't think that that's going to happen, Jim, because I think we're going to have an absolute, crisis. Basically, a civil war is going to break out down there. I believe that the impacts of that on Canada are going to be felt harshly. There could be an increased potential for unrest here in Canada for sure because of that. We've already seen that with BLM and some of these Antifa things. When we have Marxism, socialism, and communism creeping into our great Canada that is the true north, strong and free, founded on Judeo-Christian values, and when we see that these things are being propagated, promoted to our young people, and that even Black Lives Matter is making its way into Canada, and Antifa has been a growing movement. I've been to, protests and whatnot, standing up for what I believe is right with respect to all kinds of issues. I mean, the COVID or gender issues or whatever, standing up for families and for the rights of families to, parental rights definitely to be protected. Then you have Antifa showing up and causing unrest like this. So we have Prime Minister Trudeau who takes a knee to these kinds of things, who says that, he appreciates the Chinese model of government, and most Canadians should be shaking their head at that, and sadly, a lot of people don't even understand maybe the scope of what that means. And so we don't have good government right now. We're over $1 trillion in debt. So can we get through the USMCA? Can we get Donald Trump's help, to deal with some of these things? And, the underground things that are still ruminated over, are these things that should be brought out? Are these things that should be demanded that they be exposed? Because this is inappropriate, for anybody, let alone the Prime Minister of a nation. So we'll see what happens. so far, Norm Traversy is a guy who delivered to the U.S. and Mexican embassy a list, an entire document full of the treasonous and corrupt acts of Prime Minister Trudeau. So far, I haven't seen anyone, taking action on that based on the USMCA. So, maybe now it's not the right time. Maybe it is something that can be dealt with in a year when we've, maybe hopefully got some peace back into the United States, and maybe Donald Trump will have time to think about taking care of Trudeau. That would be really wonderful. I'd love to see that. That's a long answer, Jim.
Should the Christian Heritage Party change its name to include people who aren't Christians?
Right. Well, some people say that we should, but the reality is that the Dominion of Canada was founded based on a biblical worldview going all the way back to the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta guaranteed equal rights for all citizens, and it established basically the rule of law that we follow today. And that meant that every citizen, even the king, is under that same law. So the Charter of Rights and Freedoms say that Canada is founded on principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. This should be really a very safe place for anyone of any religion, whether they believe in God or not. But the fact is that it's this kind of governance that actually gives you the freedom to believe or not believe in God and to live your life as you wish. And so when the Bible tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves and to do unto others as we would have them do to us, the Bible says don't lie, don't steal, don't kill, don't commit adultery. These are laws that are good for everybody, not just Christians. This can be great for atheists, Sikh and Muslim and all the people in the different groups that we have represented, and especially, no violence. This is good for all people, especially those that feel that they are sometimes under threat of violence. So our Canadian heritage is based on Christian principles, and that is for the protection of everyone. So whatever your background and beliefs, if you're Canadian, you have a Christian heritage, and it's those principles of that heritage that we want to protect. And so the name will sometimes put some people off, but I believe that all of those other parties out there are also operating on ideologies or worldviews, and those do have a certain religious component to them. For instance, when you don't have a problem lying, that is you're basically your worldview is that it's okay to lie if it helps me. And that is a humanistic point of view. That is the religion of humanism. That is the religion of, I put myself first. And, there's some things we want to protect, and we also want to protect our nation from against political Islam. This is the ideology where you're there to dominate, like Hassan al-Banna, who started the Muslim Brotherhood. He said that the Islamic perspective is to come in and to dominate. Well, that is not the religious perspective of Christians. Christians who founded this nation were not here to dominate, but rather to bring freedom to every person. And so that's what makes and gives a different flavor. So if you value the freedom of Canada, if you understand that actually was formed and came from those who believed in the Bible, because the Bible is the ultimate freedom book. It's the ultimate freedom. It's about choosing, and you get to choose. You get to choose to be religious or not religious. That's what gives you that right. When you begin to appreciate that, you can then appreciate a Christian Heritage Party, even though you're not a Christian per se.
We'll have more with Laura-Lynn Tyler Thompson right after this.
Value from success. Growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Laura-Lynn Thompson. Laura-Lynn, you know, most people have short memories. What has the NDP done for BC the last 3 years?
Well, you know, I have some personal pet peeves, and I can name a few of those. You know, the NDP gave us the bubble zones to keep pro-lifers away from abortion clinics so that, you know, basically you're stopped from just having peaceful civil protests to the killing of unborn children. The NDP is trying to force all palliative care facilities in Canada to participate in assisted suicide. And, you know, this is the killing of the elderly. And I recently had a guest on. Her name is Angelina Ireland, and she's just amazing. And she is fighting so hard for the Delta Hospice, the last remaining stand where they do not offer assisted suicide. They only have 10 beds, I believe, in the whole place. And these people, you know, are there, and this place does not want to offer them death, but rather life. And the amazing comment that she said to me was, if you want to die, this means that we have not done our job as service providers. And I would rather operate from that position. When I get old, I don't want people, somebody constantly every day, well, hey, you feeling bad today? Well, you know what? This could all be over. We can just offer you this way to go. And also, with the NDP's perspective, we are about to usher in the most liberal way of thinking on euthanasia of all the countries in the world. This would even offer a 15-year-old going through a difficult depression. You know, we've all been 15 or 14 or 13, and you have a bad season. Perhaps the love of your life that you thought was everything has rejected you. These are things that make somebody very sad for, could be an extended period of time. Decisions can be made by that young person that then they can literally sign away their life, and they can actually end their life at a time of vulnerability. So this is the setup that we are entering into in Canada, and I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right that vulnerable people will be given an opportunity to make decisions at a vulnerable moment that don't need to be made. The other thing that upsets me about the NDP is that they have forced SOGI into our schools, and our school-age children have been taught that they are gender fluid, that if you're a boy, you can be a girl. If you're a girl, you can be a boy. And they have done this with dozens and dozens and dozens of transgender indoctrination books that are in our schools. When I first began talking about this, people thought that, it can't be true, that I was making it up. But, 3.5 years later, I am believed, and now they know that it's a problem. And many, many parents have become upset. And they don't have to be Christian parents. They just are, regular parents living in Canada, love Canadian freedom, but do not want their young boys and girls confused with, unscientific, unsupported ideologies that go against the basics of human biology, male and female. And so I'm very upset that the NDP has literally ushered that into our schools, having very sexually explicit content in the curriculum from K to 12. And the NDP took over local hospital boards, and now it has also paralyzed the economy in that regard. Provincial debt is up and personal freedom is down. There's lots of things that I'm unhappy with about the NDP.
The Liberals and the NDP are most likely to form the next government in BC. Are people likely to be voting against a party or for it?
People always vote against the parties they think are doing the most harm. And big parties always try to buy their votes with their own money. That is taxpayers' money. We just saw it as the NDP this last weekend started, on Sunday, basically rolled out a whole bunch of money, which is our money that they're now trying to buy us into, signing up again for 4 more years with the NDP. And it would be nice for a change if people would vote for what they really want, a candidate and a party that values life, who supports safer streets, stronger families, for more freedom and lower debt. That's what we represent, and every CHP BC candidate offers voters that opportunity to vote their conscience and to show their support for life, family, and freedom.
Are the BC Liberals and the NDP just the version of left and even more left?
They absolutely are. Yes, and they are getting lefter all the time. In 2016, it was the BC Liberals along with the NDP who unanimously voted to add sexual orientation and gender identity to the BC Human Rights Code. And they rushed that through. First, second, and third readings were all done in one day with no opposition and no real debate. And the BC Liberals did nothing to remove the NDP bubble zones also, when they had a chance, and they continued with the NDP policy of not disclosing the number or types of abortions that were going on. All of these things are just, this is not, the Liberals are supposed to maybe represent sort of the conservative side of the provincial, voting bloc, and they don't at all. All of this is terrible, and not to mention the way that they've recently treated Lori Throness in Chilliwack. I mean, here's a fellow, stands against Soji, speaks loudly and courageously on, gender identity and maintaining, scientific standards for that. And he's a strong pro-lifer, and he is treated terribly within the BC Liberals. So I think we have a real problem going on. And if people have been voting for the Liberal Party in British Columbia and they do not support these values, then I am hoping that this needs to be the time where you go, again, it's just like the Conservative Party of Canada, on the federal level. It's just leaning more and more and more left, and people with these values, I guess they're afraid. I guess they feel that they're stuck. I mean, I'm hoping that somebody somewhere will vote me in as the true conservative voice that is representing true conservative values. And sooner or later, if we keep voting this left-leaning Liberal that's almost an NDPer, into party, into power, then we get what we have voted for. And so I hope that this is the beginning of provincial voters making a real change.
Would a minority government be beneficial to the growth of the Christian Heritage Party?
When CHPBC MLAs take their places in the legislature, we will make a difference. And so, we just hope that we can be a voice. We hope that people will begin to see that having our voice in there is going to be beneficial to keeping Canada the place that they love, and they, have grown up with the Canadian values and traditions that they think are important. A minority government may be less arrogant and might give us more opportunity to influence legislation. So, maybe you have more of a voice if it's not completely, dominated by one party. And that's important, and all voices matter in Canada.
If you win a seat for the Christian Heritage Party and you end up in the same position as the Green Party did in the last election, where they get to choose which party to support to form the government, any position from you right now on who you would side with, the BC Liberals or the NDP?
Right. Well, I think definitely we're closer to the BC Liberals than to the NDP. The NDP has gone so far left philosophically that they no longer grasp reality in truth. And people are telling me this, like they were once NDP and they just can't stay with them. It's just too far, even for NDPers. They think that little boys can become little girls. They think debt is a normal way to run a government. They think teachers are more qualified than parents to guide their children's moral development. They do not respect parental rights. They keep information from parents. They think blocking pipelines, for instance, is consistent with, a bright economic future. And we, as a Christian Heritage Party, we would bring the voice of reason and truth into the legislature, and we would work with any MLA who shares our respect for parents, our respect for freedom, for law and order, and for balanced budget.
How can people find out more about the Christian Heritage Party and follow you during the election?
Thank you so much for asking that, Jim. Our party website is chpbc.ca, and there you'll have information. And also follow me on my, my YouTube site, Laura-Lynn Thompson. My YouTube, I talk a lot about provincial politics. I talk a lot about federal politics. And I was never really into politics, Jim, but I think when I began realizing that my values were being circumvented and literally destroyed before my eyes because of politics, that's when I knew that I had to put my name forward. And we have a real lack of courage. That's what we're lacking in Canada. People do share powerful values, for that we believe in, but what we do seem to have a problem with is talking out loud about that, because the culture has become so noisy on the other side. They are so pushy, they are so arrogant that they think that it's their way or the highway. And the NDP and the Liberals, speaking of in the federal parties, have become so politically correct. And if you dare to speak against the narrative, you are somehow vilified, ostracized, called names. You have to experience social terrorism. And I frankly am past that. I don't care what you call me. I'm still going to speak what I believe is right. I believe that Canadians have a right to peace, to prosperity, to their values being maintained and respected. There needs to be a respect for parental rights in Canada. That needs to be restored. It has absolutely been undermined. Right here in British Columbia, we have the father whose transgender daughter was, the beginning of transitioning her body and whatever they think they can do, giving cross-sex hormones at the age of 14 without a father's consent. That is wrong. That is wrong that a court goes against the family narrative to place these things into our society, and nobody says anything. And the conservatives in the federal party and the BC Liberals will not stand up for parents in this regard. It is time to stand up for our religious freedom, for our parental rights, for freedom in Canada, and we don't care about being bullied. Call us any name you like. We are standing for what's right. And the fact is that I know that so many Canadians actually agree with us, and we are beginning to get such amazing support, because you can't find your values being represented in any of these other parties. So thanks so much, Jim.
Laura-Lynn, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My guest has been Laura-Lynn Thompson, leader of the Christian Heritage Party of BC, online at chpbc.ca. If you have any questions for Laura-Lynn or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.